Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson of World Alternative Media here, and of course we're joined by author and economic analyst here. I'm John Sneisen. Now, we've talked so much about Venezuela in the past, but it just continues to get worse as all socialist countries continue to do eventually. And let's go into this new story, John, where there's a looming fuel crisis in Venezuela.
Yeah, well, you know what's very funny? It's actually, of course, Venezuela is an oil country.
Yeah.
So it's funny how they have a fuel crisis in an oil country. It doesn't make sense whatsoever, doesn't it? But of course, the problem with Venezuela was that the government is so dependent on their oil that it's 95% of their budget, that the income from the oil is 95% of the government budget.
Yeah.
So of course, as the oil price drops, that's why you've seen, the massive amounts of printing of currency in order to, make up for the shortfall of the price. They needed about 120 dollars a barrel. Well, now it's around 50 a barrel, which is a massive shortfall in their government, of course. So what has been happening, there's going into real hardcore not even socialist, it's more of communist.
It's heading towards absolute communism, and I mean they're all forms of collectivism, but one is much bigger than the other.
Yeah, but what has happened though is that of course they've been cutting on maintenance and everything, and of course it's state-owned. PDVSA, which is their state-owned oil company, of course, is run by a bunch of people that doesn't know how to run a business, first of all. So what you've seen is they actually fired, for example, the head of the budget in the company.
Yeah.
Which, have somebody that makes sure that the numbers make sense.
Wait a second. You're telling me that government officials don't know how to run a business? Because I'm assuming it's government officials. It is Venezuela, after all.
Yeah.
Wow. Surprise.
Yeah, surprise, right? So what is happening, though, is that they, of course, have had problems with the refineries that they have. They actually have local refineries, so they don't rely on an outside source, which probably would have been better for them actually in this case, because they're so screwed already.
Yeah.
But anyway, so what has been the huge problem is that their local refineries have had a lot of issues with maintenance, and it's been slowing down the refining of gasoline. And of course, this has been slowing down the supply of gasoline in Venezuela, and several places, the lineups to get gas, like gas stations have been running out of gas several places, and so on. So you're having a run up in shortage of gas supply in the economy, which is, of course, they have to centrally plan this. They have, like a council that works on, which one is going to get what and where the shortages are appearing and so on. And of course, it shows that they're basically useless at, trying to centrally plan an economy. They saw that with the toilet paper issues that have been made fun of before.
They ran out of
food shortages. It's just ridiculous.
They ran out of toilet paper. They can't afford the paper to print passports on, so people are stuck within the country. At least that's their official
it could be,
excuse. They might just not want people to leave.
Has some other
a few other connotations. Yeah. But what exactly do you think? Where do you think this is going to go in the next year? I mean, I'm amazed that Venezuela hasn't completely collapsed 100% at this point. I mean, I think it was 17,000% inflation at free market level months ago.
Yeah, and it's worsened a little bit. It's kind of like not going as crazy up because the gas prices raised a little bit up. So, but it's not going to save them in the long run. I believe we're going to see even lower gas prices coming. So Venezuela is definitely not going to save themselves. They already hyperinflated the currency so much. Like, it is a hyperinflation in Venezuela.
Yeah.
And it completely destroyed the whole economy in itself.
Well, temporary manipulation surely isn't going to stop the end the end result. And I mean, isn't that how they got in this mess in the first place? Manipulation.
Yeah, well, first of all, they had a socialist economy, believing in different things that, you have to take care of everybody, you have to give them checks, make them depend on the government. They had, they were pretty good when it was at $120, dollars, running this type of fake collectivist system.
Yeah.
But then the problem is, as the prices went down, like demand for oil, like we're in the depression and a demographic cliff worldwide. So that's why you've seen the supply of oil gone down quite drastically. Well, not the supply, but the demand of oil. So they're going to get hit no matter what. They're really just destroying their whole economy. Like, there's nothing left of what Venezuela tried to be at one point.
Well, you mentioned taking care of people, which is important to point out that, under the veil of taking care of people, they get a lot of power constructs done and built up. And the problem is, when we talk about actually taking care of people, like this is Hegelian. It's Hegelian dialectic of problem, reaction, solution, repeat. So what it's actually doing is it's stopping people from being able to take care of other people in the long run, because you monopolize these industries. There's dependency, of course. And then all this manipulation eventually adds up to people being unable to take care of themselves, and then you see people drinking out of gutters, like there have been lately, children drinking out of gutters in the streets, breaking into zoos to kill the animals so that they can eat, because they have to wait in a bread line if they even are able to get bread, and they're given a number that says you can have this portion of food for your whole family.
Rationing. We've seen that in any time when there's, of course, war, they take over the food supply of a country. And then what they do, they give you a number, the food stamps. We've seen that in the United States, they even have that in the United States, the food stamps. They call them food stamps. And then, of course, you have other countries like Venezuela now. But that's what they did. And when they came into Norway, my grandmother told me about this, how they took over. First of all, they took over all the farms and destroyed everything on the farm, killed all the animals. So people were completely dependent on the Nazis for, the supply of food or whatever, and go and beg to them, right? So they just gave them the stamps, right? You had the stamps, the rations, and so on. And that's what their ultimate goal is, to, have a system where you barely get by so they can have full control over you. What they want is they want to be like North Korea, basically, with Kim Jong-un, being the great leader. That's what they really want, but on a global scale.
Yeah, so all this quantitative easing, fractional reserve banking, building up this construct, which eventually all comes tumbling down, always has, always will. And it sounds kind of familiar to me, a few of these things that you're mentioning, this vast amount of debt, this dependence on, well, it's an oil country, it can't go down, it'll survive forever. It reminds me of something quite familiar to us, and that is Canada. Now, obviously, Canada is way behind Venezuela, but of course we use a lot of the exact same manipulation tactics that Venezuela has done for so many years.
Well, there's several provinces that are very dependent on different kind of commodities. We have the Maritimes, very, very dependent on oil royalties. We talked about Newfoundland. Was it Newfoundland, Labrador?
Yeah.
We talked about, right, where they have $2.2 billion they had, or whatever it was, in income from oil royalties, and it dropped in half. So, they're having a massive deficit spending there.
Then a high government GDP as well.
Huge government there. So they, of course, when you have that dependency on any commodity, no matter what it is, they tend to take advantage of that and then build the government up on this passive income that they get from stealing from the local producers. Instead of having the producers really create a great economy for the local people, they just give everything to the government instead.
Well, what I kind of wanted to get to is that I want other people in other countries to understand that they're not immune to what's happening in Venezuela, that it could very well happen to them too. And we see most countries in the world use quantitative easing. Most countries in the world print currency out of thin air. They devalue the dollar, create debt and inflation, and eventually it adds up. Some more than others. Some will take longer than others, though when the US dollar falls, I'm pretty sure most countries are going to start falling with it, like a domino effect.
Western system, right?
Absolutely. And I just kind of wanted to kind of draw the comparisons for people that this can happen to you, and most likely will if these things are perpetuated. Of course, it's less likely for the same type of hyperinflationary scenario to happen in the United States as Venezuela, but it can go in that direction and get very close.
Yeah, they have a different problem in the United States, though. They have a massive amount of debt that they created. So now people are selling it off, so they get inflation that way. When they sell it off, it comes back as US dollars into their economy. So that way you get inflation instead of, their massive dependency on oil that they had in Venezuela. So there's different types of triggering events that actually created that hyperinflation, that massive hyperinflationary scenario. It's different triggers on a lot of things, but for the Western economies, it's debt.
Okay, well, just ending or finishing this off, John, can you give us a bit of a bottom line on what this crisis in Venezuela means and what they can do to save themselves as free individuals, free of the state?
Well, first of all, yeah, Venezuelans has to stop listening to their government. Their government has failed. If you think that the government is still working really in Venezuela, go and look at, for example, our great friends Luke Rudowski and Jeff Berwick's video. Just fantastic, just showing exactly what's going on.
Yeah, you won't believe what we saw in Venezuela was the name of the video. Incredible work.
Oh my goodness. I just love what they do. They, risk their life basically to go and get the real information. Because there's not too many other people that want to go to one of the murder capitals of the world.
The murder capital of the world, yeah.
There's not very many people that want to go there. So I think the Venezuelan people just needs to abolish their government and start from scratch, say that we're not going to pay any debt, that was... either to the IMF or to whoever issued the bonds. And then, of course, the banking system. This is actually another trigger that could happen with this, is U.S. banks would really, I know Citibank, for example, might face a huge squeeze because they've invested so much money into Venezuelan debt. So that's another thing that could really trigger a tsunami. But I think they should just say, we're bankrupt. Look at Greece. They're completely bankrupt now again. They're short of money again. Emergency lending, blah, blah, blah. They've always been bankrupt. Ever since 2008, they were bankrupt then.
Yeah.
People don't understand this. And Venezuela has a credit rating of... just above junk, basically. And it's a highly, highly speculative investment. I would say it's worse than junk. It's garbage. From the gutter, it's, gutter water from gutter sewage water from Venezuela. That's what it is. Yeah. Their credit rating.
Unfortunately, the water that a lot of people have resorted to drinking because they can't afford actual clean drinking water.
The thing is, what people need to do is they need to, try to fight against this government takeover that they have, this totalitarian government. I don't know what the options are, but I do know what the options are for the individual, is to, try to get out of the country first of all, but then if you can't, try to see if you can actually get, at least food, have food supply for yourself. I know that they're fighting to stop that, of course. The government, they don't want, as I said again, when any government or any totalitarian state comes in, they destroy the food supply, of course, to make people dependent. So try to do that. Of course, gold and silver. I saw this long before, the hyperinflation. I saw gold started to skyrocket in Venezuela, and so they're going to go into hyperinflation from that scene, how dependent they were on oil. And sure enough, we're here, In my book, I wrote about this. I said, as you probably read in my book, I wrote it in 2015. I said, Venezuela is either, become bankrupt or in hyperinflation or really struggling. And of course, there are two of those, and they should be the third one. But of course, the great people of Venezuela needs to understand that the only thing that you could go forward with doing is, get back your individual freedoms. Don't let this collectivist system of the group take care of you. The gun-free zones, it's going to protect you. Look at fucking Caracas and places like this. Actually, there's, I think, in the top 10, there's about at least five cities that are in Venezuela that are murder capitals.
Well, I mean, just think about this. While people are dying left and right, when people are starving left and right, when people can't even leave the country, when there's all these horrible things happening, they're weighing stacks of money, yet, there's a gun-free zone, and, don't smoke in this area, and all that. There's all these stupid regulations and control mechanisms by the socialist government that are only hurting people further, while there's some real issues that the government just sits in their golden palaces and laughs at the masses. It's kind of like Nero playing his fiddle and laughing while Rome burns.
Well, that's exactly what it is. It's the end of, the state. That's how it goes down.
Yeah, and then there's bread and circuses.
Yeah, and that's where we're at with Venezuela. They're going down, and they have breads and circuses, and they're in their final stages of the government collapse that we're going to see in other places around the world. It's nobody that thinks that we can have this perpetual growing government over time is ever going to be right. We have to end up with the death of the government. It's a natural cycle, unfortunately, and we need to stop this natural cycle from even getting into play where we do create this government because we do want these, and we do forget about the past. So we do always create this government, then it grows and grows and grows, and then it collapses in on itself, and we continue to do this every single time. Look at the Mayan Empire, all these empires. Of course, there were some food shortages and stuff that was in there, but of course there was a lot of them had the massive government at the end collapse.
I would just correct myself in saying it's more like circuses, not bread and circuses, because there's not that much
there's
bread.
not even bread. Yeah,
but it's a terrible thing to witness, and we try to warn people. People don't always listen, but we do our best, and it all comes down to the freedom of the individual and what the market can provide for people with the individual demand rather than the manipulated demand of the state, which always ends up in the same scenario every single time. We warn and we warn. People yell at us for daring to attack socialist utopia Venezuela years ago, and look what happened. It's the vindication we have, unfortunately. It's not the vindication we want, but I'd rather be wrong about it. But
you don't want to see the terrible misery that people are in. It's terrible, and it shouldn't have happened. But of course, it happened because people don't listen to or even look into the past or history.
Absolutely. Free markets, free monetary system. That's my bottom line. And thanks again, John. And we'll be back at you with much more. Check the links below. GoFundMe, Patreon. We can't do it without you. Any donation is very much appreciated. And of course, check our address in the below comments and description and on the screen for Bitcoin. We'll provide the QR code for you to scan. So thanks again, and we'll be back at you with much more. This is Josh Sigurdson, John Sneisen, signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.